Okay, so, yes, pregnant women should not have to beg the court to get an abortion. Because the only person who should have, how should I phrase this? The only person who understands what the woman needs is most likely the woman, and most definitely her doctor. And the court is neither of those things. And they're most certainly not medical professionals and should not have any say as to whether a woman has an abortion. I do not care what you think about abortion, because I know this is hard to believe, but people who are pro-choice, not fans of abortion. They just know that it should be there if they need it. And that does not mean that they're going, oh, goody, goody, I'm pregnant, so now I can have an abortion. That's not the way things work. But anyway, let's get to the article that brought this up. A pregnant Texas woman whose fetus had a fatal diagnosis asked a court Tuesday to let her have an abortion, bringing what her attorneys say is the first lawsuit of its kind in the U.S. since Roe v. Wade was overturned last year. Now just think about this. Her fetus has a fatal diagnosis. Why does she have to go to court to ask for an abortion? If she's getting that her fetus has a fatal diagnosis, she should be allowed to just, ask the doctor to perform the procedure, because that's what doctors do. That is the whole point of medicine, is to give your patient the best health care you can. And in this case, the best health care is also an abortion, because the fetus is going to die. And why put the mother through that mental anguish? It's probably bad enough that she found out that there's a fatal diagnosis. Why make her watch her baby suffer if it even gets to that point? Why? Why would you be so cruel? Texas is one of 13 states that ban abortion at nearly all stages of pregnancy. Although Texas allows exceptions, doctors and women have argued in court this year that the state's law is so restrictive and vaguely worded that physicians are fearful of providing abortions lest they face potential criminal charges, which should never be something that comes out of a doctor's mouth. Doctors should be able to practice medicine without fearing that someone is watching over their shoulder. The only time that should be the case is if this is an unscrupulous doctor. But we're having, decent doctors who know what the hell they're doing, who are afraid to properly care for their patients because that might get them into legal trouble. That should not be happening. Anyway, Kate Cox, 31, is 20 weeks pregnant and has been told by doctors that her baby is likely to be stillborn or live for a week at most, according to the lawsuit filed in Austin. So, yeah, she has to go beg the court to let her have an abortion so her anguish doesn't continue. Because if she's 20 weeks pregnant, then chances are she wanted to have this baby. So, why continue her mental anguish by making her give birth to a dead baby? Or one that would be alive for a week? Why? unless cruelty is the point, in which case that makes perfect sense. The suit says doctors told her their hands are tied under Texas's abortion law. Kate Cox needs an abortion, and she needs it now, the lawsuit reads. Spokespersons for the Texas Attorney General's office, which has defended the ban in court, did not immediately respond to a message seeking comment. Well, of course not, because they know that no matter what they say, they'll sound like absolute dicks. I mean, come on. Again, you should not have to go through a lawsuit just to diminish your pain. Molly Duane, Cox's lawyer and an attorney for the Center for Reproductive Rights, said Tuesday that a court has not yet scheduled a hearing, but one could happen later this week. Oh, goody goody. This might take so long she might end up having to give birth to a stillborn baby or watch her baby die within a week, and is probably going to be in incredible pain. Yay! Go Texas! The lawsuit was filed a week after the Texas Supreme Court heard arguments about whether the ban is too restrictive for women with pregnancy complications. That case is among the biggest ongoing challenges to abortion bans in the U.S., although a ruling from the all-Republican court may not come for months. Of course not. Cox, a mother of two, had cesareans with her previous pregnancies. She learned she was pregnant for a third time in August and was told weeks later that her baby was at a high risk for a condition known as trisomy 18, which has a very high likelihood of miscarriage or stillbirth and low survival rates, according to the lawsuit. Oh, Lord. Doctors told Cox that if the baby's heartbeat were to stop, inducing labor would carry a risk of a uterine rupture because of her prior cesareans, and that another cesarean at full term would endanger her ability to carry another child. Oh my God, she's screwed no matter what she does. Oh, wow. That poor woman. It is not a matter of if I will have to say goodbye to my baby, but when. I'm trying to do what's best for my baby and myself, but the state of Texas is making us both suffer, Cox said in a statement. Because, as I said, this isn't a bug, it's a feature. I mean, how can you possibly? I mean, there was one, I think, Idaho Republican, who was like, oh, I didn't realize that this was going to cause so much trouble. Because, that's what happens when a bunch of lawyers try to practice medicine. What? You don't know the ins and outs of medicine? Right, because you're not an expert. You're not a doctor. So, of course, you're not going to... So, at best, we can say that these are a bunch of morons who didn't think things through when they passed this ban. And at worst, they see this as a punishment to at least women. They probably weren't even thinking of punishing the baby, just punishing women, because apparently, women who have abortions or even think about having abortions are horrible people, or that women who have sex are bad people or something. God knows what was going through their empty heads. In July, several Texas women gave emotional testimony about carrying babies they knew would not survive and doctors unable to offer abortions despite their spiraling conditions. A judge later ruled that Texas's ban was too restrictive for women with pregnancy complications, but that decision was swiftly put on hold after the state appealed. Because of course they did. Duane said Cox reached out last week after coming across news stories following the hearing at the state Supreme Court. The arguments were held on the same day that Cox received results of an amniocentesis that confirmed prior tests about her pregnancy. You know, maybe at the beginning, I would have, now granted, maybe I'm being too hard on the Attorney General. Maybe they appealed because, it's the law and they can't do anything about it. It's their job to uphold the law. However, I don't know, part of me thinks that he doesn't actually give a shit about these women and actually doesn't care if they suffer. That's what I'm leaning towards, even though it could be argued that he's just doing his job. But anyway. How many people are going through the exact same thing as Kate is right now, but are not in a position to file a lawsuit? Dwayne said in an interview. I think that gives you a sense of the scale of the problem that we're dealing with. Exactly. Because when people, which is the end of the article, but when people make broad statements about women who need abortions, saying how, complications are rare and blah, 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 and most women, don't actually need an abortion, they just don't want to be pregnant. Exactly what stats did you get that from? Your ass? Because, no, it's not as rare as you think. Now, obviously not all complications are to the point that they lead to needing an abortion. But complications happen. I mean, pregnancy is not a walk in the park. It's not a cakewalk. It's not something that women can just, get through without a problem. I mean, yeah, there are plenty of women who don't suffer any complications, and that's great. But we can't assume that that's the norm. And, I mean, all you have to do is to look at history. There are plenty of stories of women dying because they either were in a situation where they tried to give birth and they died while giving birth because, well, granted, some of it was that the environment wasn't ideal, but it could also be that they should not have had to give birth. They should have been able to have an abortion. And there are plenty of stories of women who ended up dying because they couldn't get to a hospital. Well, what, you think that because medicine has improved that somehow magically women aren't in that situation anymore? Do you think that these women are lying? I mean, what does she have to give birth right there in the courtroom, and everybody there stands there and watches this baby either be born stillborn or suffer terribly for however long, up to a week, before people realize, oh, this is a real thing and we shouldn't force a woman to suffer like that. Hell, you shouldn't force the baby to suffer like that. What the hell did the baby do that they need to suffer because you guys are dicks? Because you just want to punish women because they dare to have sex, as if the only women who have abortions are harlots? I mean, I really do not understand how people can say things like, oh, well, we're allowing, oh, this isn't Texas, but we're allowing for the life of the mother and the child. But it has to be only abortion up to this point. That's not how any of this works. Unless you are in this situation or you are a medical professional, an obstetrician of the woman involved, you really shouldn't have a say of whether she needs an abortion. Because, especially in this case, she didn't want an abortion. She didn't want to go through this. She's a mother. She has 2 children. She didn't want to go through any of this. But she has to. Because she doesn't want to suffer. She doesn't want her baby to suffer. She's doing what she thinks is best for everybody involved. The state should have absolutely nothing to do with this. The state should not have any say, because this isn't about them. And if there are women out there who want to risk it, who want to risk a stillbirth, risk watching their baby suffer for a week, just so, they could have their baby at least for that amount of time because they're that freaking selfish, fine. That, you do you. You don't get to tell other women how to deal with their pregnancy. Especially if it's this heart-wrenching. But at no point should women be told that I get to tell you when it's the right time to have an abortion. Because you don't know their situation. You don't know their mental situation, physical situation, financial situation. You don't know any of it. You don't know these women. You don't get a say. Anyway, I've rambled on enough about that. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video.